So in 2005, we lost 60 kids in a plane crash. They never really paid compensation. So that's why I went to study law. So my job was basically, you know what? I want to study law, go through the law process, and then after come back and sue. What I've learned is that if you want to build a company that grows that fast, it's like launching a rocket. You have to gather a lot of trust. I spend a lot of money on my education. There's no amount of money I cannot spend on learning. You always just need wisdom more than you need capital. I've seen it. I am insane about making sure my cost of living is low because that's your true freedom. So what I do in my business is I do not, under any circumstance at all, in any case, at any time, in any situation, touch money. This year in particular, I was busy. I had a lot of assignments. In fact, I actually had a stroke.
Without further ado, I would like you all, with great joy in your hearts and great gusto in your claps, join me welcome someone that I believe has built 2 unicorns and a half, Mr. Iyinoluwa Aboyeji. All right. Thank you so much. You were saying.
I was just saying that it's shocking to see this many people on a Saturday
morning.
After a Friday night.
I'm like, what's going on?
I mean, it's really, really exciting to actually have this many people because, trust me, TMCon next week, I will send you videos.
Yes, please.
I'll send you videos.
Send
but
me videos.
I know how the city is actually very excited to receive, and they're excited to build something exceptional.
Yes.
And but interestingly, I have a picture to show you.
Please.
Innocent.
Please.
For this moment.
Where's this picture? Where is
My
this
picture.
picture? Where's our picture? Am I in this picture?
Picture to show him.
I've been waiting for this moment.
This picture was taken in 2015.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I remember that shirt.
I think the only thing that can be remembered is the shirt.
I wore that shirt a lot.
So this was 2015.
Can you remember the conference?
You know the conference that we saw you? Red Media.
Red Summit.
The Red Summit.
Red Summit.
Yeah. It was part of our early journey.
Yes.
Myself and Solomon took flights with all the monies we had made.
Yes.
Wow.
And we're like, we are going to Lagos for this Red Summit because, I mean, it was an industry summit.
Yes.
And then we felt like if we went, we would learn a lot about the industry and then come build over here. You guys were building and everything. And I remember meeting you and my partner also. And then we were just talking with you and you really encouraged us. You were really warm.
You're really warm.
I'll really say not so much.
I didn't.
I mean, we have to appreciate you for your warmness and simplicity. I mean, you encouraged us. And even listening to your interview where you spoke about how in the early days of Andela, you were jumping buses and still pushing.
Yep.
There was so much energy in you. You encouraged us. And, at breakfast, we mentioned possibility mentality.
Yeah.
And for us, that was the shift. And after meeting you and you encouraged us, we're like, if Iyi can create, we too can create.
And you definitely have.
Yeah, I mean, we still are.
Please give me that one.
So I think we will redo this selfie.
We have to do it.
We have
redo
to.
this selfie.
Find that shirt.
Yeah, but I mean, that speaks a lot. I mean, Innocent, you can take down the picture now. Yeah, but that speaks a lot. And I was waiting to show you this picture because we followed your journey.
Yes.
You've inspired us in many ways, even to have the audacity to build, And I think going down into your foundational experience, I think that's where we'll start the conversation from, more like the origin.
Yeah.
Like, in your upbringing, there are lots of things I've heard about. Like, I mean, from you saying you were sitting in the cab with your dad.
Yeah.
And
He was a driver.
yeah, his dad was driving a cab and like olden days Uber.
Yeah.
And
Kabu.
Kabu, yeah.
And then coming back to even your how that mindset. What do you have to say about that mindset and how it fueled your decisions?
The one thing I would say is that when I had when we're talking about this at breakfast, it's like when I think about the lottery that life gave me, it was just amazing parents,
Wow.
right? It was just amazing parents. My dad and my mom are clergy. My dad is G of Foursquare. And at the time, he wasn't. If you know how Foursquare works, it's not anybody's church.
Yeah.
But at the time, I watched my parents sort of grow their wealth, grow in this possibilities mindset.
Wow.
I mean, when I was born, my dad didn't have a job. He had just finished his MBA at University of Lagos, and he didn't have a job, and he was looking around for a job. My mom would tell me that, I they used to get me I didn't like breast milk, so they used to get me the milk, the baby milk on credit.
Wow.
Wow.
And then I actually watched us grow, as a family. I mean, from my dad was driving Kabu Kabu, he got a job eventually, first at Now Merchant Bank, which is now Sterling, then SPDC, when things kind of started to look up. And even as we grew, like I watched my dad prioritize investing in our education over everything else. So we went to school, which is always a weird experience. We went to school with his bosses 3 levels above him.
Wow.
So you can just imagine, like, this is my
investment he had to
boss's,
make.
my dad's boss's boss.
Wow.
And we're in the same class. And
That
he's
was-
like,
that was a huge
that guy. I
sacrifice.
never get to see him, but I can see him at your school. So it was the principles through which they raised us really, and it was a house where you never knew where you were going to sleep, right? Because it's pastor's house, so that means anybody can show up,
Yeah.
right?
I can imagine.
So depending on who showed up, then sleeping arrangements will be determined.
Yeah. Typically.
So we learned a lot. I learned a lot from my parents about service, about the value of hard work, about God. I mean, at the time, I didn't internalize a lot of those lessons. But the beautiful thing about the seeds that are sown in you at that level is that they grow with you, right? So even when you try to imbibe other people's principles and all that, eventually, your own godly seed will sort of overpower or supersede all this other stuff. So, but that was my background. My background was, we're very, no, we didn't know anybody. We grew together. I like to think we grew. As my dad grew, we grew as well. He actually, for a very long time, he was a shell in the pension side, and he kind of stagnated in his career, and so we had to move to Warri about 20 years ago now. He basically had to start over there in a new career as like a chief, community leader. There's this CLO designation, so where you manage the community relations. Then we got into some really hot water with the interethnic crisis. So I watched war happen in front of my eyes, people die. Then we got into the militancy.
Oh my.
And my dad got kidnapped a couple of times. I mean, that was his job, right? His job was to go and negotiate for hostages. So naturally,
Oh, really?
yeah. Naturally, every now and then they'll be like, "Yeah, well, if you're letting them go, keep you, right?" It's cool. Until the body shows up. So I mean, I got to see that, and I think that background really infused in me, because then I realized that, nothing was really impossible.
Yeah.
But I think the turning point for me when it comes to, okay, the path I'm on right now, so me, I just knew, look, if you put your mind to it, you can work hard, you can make it, no matter how bad. I mean, I grew up in I was conscious when Abacha was president. So I don't think there's anybody that is as bad as that, right? So we just knew in our family that, look, so long as you trust God and you work hard, it can never be that bad. You can always make it out. And then, I had this incredible opportunity. I'd never been outside Nigeria until 2008.
Wow.
Yeah, I've never been outside Nigeria. Obviously, I used to do that thing that I used to do in secondary school where you lied that you went.
I did that too.
But yeah, I've never been outside Nigeria. The first time I left the country was when I went to Canada. And that itself was just miraculously arranged because for me, I mean, I wrote JAMB, I got a fairly good score. I was going to go to OAU.
Ife.
I was going to go to Ife. That was it, because that was what we could do. But my dad really, in keeping with his absurd belief that you have to spend on education, he wanted to send my brother, who studied engineering, to Canada.
Okay.
Because he felt that science education at that time in the country was nothing to write home about. So he had already applied. My brother had already been processed. Me, I was going to study law, so it was like, you can't study law.
If I may ask, why were you interested in law in your early days?
Well, you see, for me,
Yeah.
what really drew me to law was actually something that happened in my secondary school. So in 2005, I went to school in Abuja here, actually, Loyola.
Okay.
So in 2005, we lost 60 kids in a plane crash.
Yeah.
And I was, at the time, I was like there was this thing we created called the Concerned Students Association, right? Where we're trying to advocate like, hey, like you guys have to have better like air safety regulation and all that, right? But for me, the biggest pain, and it's still my biggest pain today, there's no statute of limitation on lawsuits in Nigeria. So eventually, the only thing is that by the time I could afford a lawsuit, the airline was out of business. I don't know if it's poetic justice. But like they never really paid compensation, right? Any kind of compensation for that. So that's why I went to study law. So my job was basically, you know what? I want to study law so I can come back and sue this motherfucker. That was that was my thing. But this is really funny, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll go to OAU. Don't worry, we'll go through the law process, and then after we'll come back and sue them. So that was it. But obviously, I think my interests evolved over time. But anyway, like I was saying, I went to when we graduated, my dad got this deal from my brother's school. I think they maybe didn't have enough students that year. Again, context 2008, right? So it was a bit tough for most families. So he got this deal where it was like, okay, if you send another kid, we'll give you like half off. So my dad was like, that's a deal. But my dad was very careful. He told me, he was like, you know that you're not supposed to go, right? And I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, it's your brother, right? I was like, yes, sir. Okay, so I'm just letting you go. Maybe if you find a scholarship, then maybe you can continue. But if you don't find anything, you come back, right? I said, yes, sir. So when I got to school, I wasn't like all the other students. Because me, I was the freebie, right? That's my mindset. So I took 10 courses in one semester. As opposed to 4. So I got there in January and I graduated in August. I didn't even spend a year. Because there's a preschool before you get into university.
Okay.
So normally you get there in January, you do 18 months, right? So the next year, September, you go. I was like, by July, I need to finish.
Okay, because you couldn't afford it.
Because I couldn't afford, I knew that, after that July.
No way.
So if I didn't get into university by September, there's nothing we're talking about. So I worked like a crazy person. And I got, actually, it's really funny how God works. I got rejected actually from the school. And not because of grades. I actually had very high grades. But we're just like, Oga, you just go here. I don't even believe the grades, right? You just got here. You can't possibly have done all these courses and passed all our requirements. So they rejected me. So my guidance counselor went to Waterloo. So he was telling me about Waterloo. He was like, you should apply here because, given you don't have the money, if you go here, you'll be able to do cooperative education, meaning you'll be able to work and go to school. So that means you can do your full 40 hours, as opposed to 20 hours of work. So it was purely economic for me, right? So like, I can work more hours so I can afford to pay whatever the balance is. So when they rejected me, I only applied to them because I was like, after them, I'll just go back to OAU. So when the results came out, they rejected me. I was just like, you know what, Mr. Mike, we tried. Thank you very much. I'm preparing to start going home. And he's like, I can't accept it too. So I'm going to go to the school because I went there and I'll talk to my dean of arts. And so the testimony was, he went there, spoke to him. The dean of arts was like, actually, when we saw the results, we saw Nigerian. We weren't sure whether there was something going on. So it's good you came. This is how we have to do it. So they went, so that was how they now I went through a college. So I went to a college, even though I met the requirements, I went to a college, St. Jerome's, which was affiliated with the university, and then I skipped over very quickly and got into the course. Now, when I got there, it transformed. I will tell you, the exposure really, really transformed me, because when you talk about possibilities thinking, I have a lot of respect for you guys, because I think for me, I saw the possibilities. Maybe I thought about them before then, but then I saw them when I traveled. For you guys, you had to imagine them, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Until much later. So it takes a different level of grit. But when I got there, the first thing was the work was easy because I had worked so hard already. Between Loyola and what I had to do, I was like, what are you even complaining about?
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, so I worked so hard that I did my fourth year paper in second year.
Wow.
And by now, I had completely reformed my focus on law. So I wanted to be a human rights, a civil rights litigation lawyer. Now I was now fully on the corporate side. I wanted to be a corporate defense antitrust lawyer.
Wow.
So my thesis was very reviled by my colleagues, because you have to present your thesis to your class.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my thesis was about how would you defend a corporation from like a trade barrier, right? So I used the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to say that companies are human beings, so you can't discriminate against them, which is like very incendiary arguments. But that's what I did, and I got a really high score, whatever. So I did that, and then I had a very interesting encounter. I had this friend that I had met the first year of school. So he had left for Silicon Valley, and around that time, to work, because I had to work, I was running the school newspaper. It was about $1 million enterprise. I was getting paid, right? So one day I just run into him in the courtyard. He's like heading somewhere to class. I'm heading somewhere, and then we just meet in the courtyard, and then we're talking, and he's like, "Oh, I spent these 2 years in Silicon Valley. They work really hard. They're building all these amazing things." And he just draws me into this world of technology that I never saw. I knew there was Twitter and Facebook, but I never really imagined that it was young people like us that made them. You know what I mean? I just thought it was like somebody, like, how they make Casio calculator? It says like somebody makes it and I use it, right? So the whole idea that there are young people somewhere that make this stuff was just like mind-blowing to me. And then The Social Network came out, so I saw the movie about how this thing was supposedly made, and I was like, if that guy can do it,
interesting. Me too, I can do it.
Wow. Right? So that was when we now started our first company, and my school was really good in the sense that they started something called Velocity. So some guy who built a messenger platform on BlackBerry called Kik before BBM. Okay. He basically made a lot of money.
He was from your school?
He was from my school, right? Our school is very famous for like dropouts. BlackBerry. I was like, the joke is like you go to Waterloo to not finish.
Become a billionaire.
That's the idea, right? So Ted Livingston essentially donated like $1 million to the school to like set up this entrepreneurship residence. I couldn't afford to live there, so it was basically a house where only students who wanted to build companies could live. I couldn't afford to live there; it was very expensive, but he could, right? Because he had gone to Silicon Valley and they were paying well. So I was still living in my basement apartment. He was there, so I would always go there to visit him. And I met a lot of people. I mean, I met Vitalik.
Wow.
Like back when.
Like, I think Ethereum, right?
Yeah,
Ethereum,
yeah, Ethereum.
Wow.
There's a lot of people. I met these guys, Mike and Jay. They sold their company to Google for $30 million. They used to work right beside me, right? I met a lot of people, and every person I met, watching them succeed, became like, wow, so you could actually do this thing. So, but the thing was, our business wasn't doing well.
What business was this at the time?
It was Book Network.
Book Network.
Yeah, so it wasn't doing well. So I was like, it took a lot of faith to be like, well, these guys are doing well, so I can. So that was when I now said, okay, maybe we should look at this Book Network thing. Maybe it's not working. So we eventually decided to sell the evolved product. We evolved it many times. We sold the product to a professor, and then we tried to start something new called Fora. I know the ironic thing is, when I moved back, so I moved back in 2013 to Nigeria, July 5th, 2013. And you know where I landed? Abuja.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I used to work a lot in my uncle's office. At the time, my uncle was the CEO of Nigerian Gas Company.
Oh, okay.
So
like NLNG, no?
No. It's Nigerian Gas Company is very from energy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they just NGC. Yeah.
NGC.
So they just started. So he was like, okay, you can just come and kind of just work out of here, stay with me. So I came back. I mean, by the way, my parents were not happy because, like, you just got a breakthrough now, and my two siblings are in Canada. So they're like, you should never have come back. Like, you've managed to finish this school thing, and you have just gotten a job like everybody else, and you came all the way back.
Why did you choose to come back?
It was a couple of things. I think number one, I realized that I wasn't excited about the kind of problems Canadians had. I think even calling it problems is like a problem itself.
Okay.
They don't have problems. They don't have any real problems. They don't have real problems. And then I think the second thing was also, I'd started to read a lot of entrepreneurship books and entrepreneurship content, and I felt that, one of the key things that I realized was that businesses in one context could work in another context. At least that's what I came back with. So I thought what I had tried to do in Canada maybe might not work because they don't need it, and maybe it'll be needed here. I realized I was a bit too early. And then the third thing was really, at the end of the day, my visa was running out, and I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to overstay.
Okay.
So there was a very practical timeline issue, which is like after you graduate, they give you 1 year to figure out what you want to do. And after that 1 year, you either become an illegal migrant or you go back home. So I figured, my time ran out, so I went back home.
Wow.
So that's how I got to Abuja. And then in Abuja, we tried to build Fora. At the time, the big idea was, let's partner with the universities.
So Fora was supposed to be like an e-learning platform?
Yeah, it was basically like a MOOC before MOOCs.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea was like you had all these professors in different universities. They were teaching across different universities, but the same professor. Would it be easier if you put all their lectures on a platform so that all the different students in each university could sort of use the same professor, but the professor doesn't have to go to each university separately, right? So we had to get NUC approval to do that. And I went to NUC for a whole month. Every day, I would just sit in front of this guy's office.
Abdurrahman.
He became NCC, so I wonder he became NUC. So I sit in front of Abdurrahman's office, and he literally just would refuse to see me. He wouldn't see me. So just like I did that for a month and then ran out. I mean, basically, because I had a team, we were building products, we are selling stuff. So basically, I mean, at the end of the day, we just ran out
your
of money.
team was still back in Canada?
Yeah.
Or you
I
had
was
to come
here.
back?
I was here. My team was still back in Canada.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did that for a month, realized it wasn't going well. And that was when I was like, okay, you know what? Jesus, what do you want?
So, I mean, to get context, you were having issues with your parents getting angry with you for coming back.
Yes.
And then you came back to start this business because it didn't work as Bookneto.
Yes, it didn't work. I mean, Bookneto was similar,
Yeah.
but it didn't work in Canada. So I was like, okay, use the same technology,
Principle,
know-how.
but different
bring it for
context.
different context. But
Let's
didn't
come
work
and solve
with that.
for us.
So why do you think it didn't work? I mean, it kind of seems to me like next for the university currently.
Yeah, it was early. It was early. Like now, it would be a no-brainer idea. But then it was early. But at the end of the day, right, if you ask me why I think it didn't work, look, the truth is, one thing I've learned over the years is that you cannot do very much without God. You can work hard. And that was what I learned from my parents. What I learned from my parents is that if you work extremely hard, you will succeed. But I sort of ignored the more obvious fact that was literally sitting right in front of me, which is that if you work extremely hard, but you don't have God, you just worked extremely hard.
and you might have bad experiences.
You might very well not succeed, nonetheless.
No cap.
So I think that I didn't have that God factor. And I think basically it was when, Fora, like literally we were at our wit's end, no investment, no money, no anything. I was in Abuja. Abuja is expensive. My uncle was happy to keep me here, but I felt useless, right? Because I go to this guy's office and he's not even seeing me. And without the regulatory approval, the VCs are afraid to allow me to do this thing. So anyway, long story short, I then decided, okay, let me go back home. So I went back to worry, which I was avoiding. So when I got there, my mom was very, she was like, look, it's good you come. My dad was like, okay, so when are you going to law school? Or should I set up an appointment with one of my old bosses so that they can employ you? Because I don't have time for all this.
Things that you're talking
I don't understand it. I really want to do entrepreneurship. I don't want to, because like I said, like once you saw those things,
you can't unsee them.
You can't unsee them, right?
You can't.
So anyway, long story short, my mom just said, look, you know what? It's fasting and prayer time. Both of you stop fighting. After fasting and prayer, we will decide together
what's next.
Do. So okay. I went home and then I did fasting and prayer, and it was honestly that December 2013, January 2014 was when my life really turned around. Because what then happened after was, I just got this fresh wind, so I went back to Lagos.
That's after the fasting and prayer.
After the fasting and prayer, I went back to Lagos. When I got to Lagos, like I think about 2-3 weeks after, I got an investment. Me and my dad were still beefing. It's not that nothing changed.
So you guys didn't reconcile after the fasting and prayer?
No, I mean, as far as it was concerned, it's like when you are ready, you are being irresponsible.
All right.
Yeah? Go and get a job, go and work. And it felt like entrepreneurship was just me being irresponsible, right? Which was his point of view, which made sense, right? So anyway, I just told them, okay, so I'm going to Lagos. I went to Lagos. About 2 or 3 weeks later, I got, there was an investor we had pitched a long time ago. He was like, hey, I like your business. Let's go through the process. Went through the process, got the investment. It was like $40,000. It wasn't a lot of money.
Okay, so this investment was for Fora?
It was for Fora.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we went to see them in New York. It was like, as part of the investment, you have to come to New York. And
how did you meet this investor?
So when I was leaving Canada, I pitched a few funds for, right, to get some money. But he wasn't ready then. But somehow, like, he was ready, right, even though the business wasn't working. So we had already started talking about pivoting the business. So we pitched him sort of the new version of the idea. He was like, oh, I like it, but come to New York. So I went to New York. I had another friend that I had met while I was doing my book network hustle in New York, Jeremy Johnson. So my thought process was the pivot for Fora fit kind of directly into his business, right? So I was like, oh, could I get him as a customer and an investor? So I started emailing this guy. And, I had given up. Like, so the entire program went through.
That's the funding program.
The funding program I went for, it was like a 1-week accelerator.
Oh.
So went for it. I just told my team, look, let me just extend like 2 or 3 more days and see if I can see this Jeremy Johnson guy. So I kept emailing him. The day before I was supposed to leave, right? I was supposed to maybe leave like around midnight, one of these midnight flights that goes through 100 countries. That was what I could afford. So I was supposed to leave with one of those flights like around 12, right? So I get an email, like, it's like maybe 3 p.m. in New York. I get an email, and he's like, hey, dude, I'm really sorry I missed all your emails. Like, this week, my company IPO'd, and it was my birthday. Please, can we see tonight? Right? And
Like
I'm
the night you were supposed to leave.
Is it possible for you to meet today? And I'm like, yes, where? It's like, okay, meet me at Fresh and Co. on 20th Street. So I went there, and we just, like, I think we talked from 5, and the shop closed on us. Wow. And we talked about everything, what the whole problem, the challenges. He was now explaining to me the economics of the business I was trying to do wouldn't work. Then we started talking about employment, youth employment. He had just been to Nairobi. He had some ideas. I had some ideas. So that was where we now started the working relationship. And he went so far. So he was like, at the end of the conversation, as we were working, was like, look, if you build this business, I will invest.
This was Andela now.
This was Andela.
So that was where the idea for Andela was birthed.
That was where it was birthed. Literally in that Fresh and Co.
Street.
Yeah, on 20th Street. So it's just like, so he's like, okay, if you build this business, I would invest. So I was like, Olówó sorrow. Yeah, the guy's a billionaire. What is it that is this how my idea said? So I told him, you know what? Let me call my team. We'll make a decision by tomorrow, and I'll give you a call back. So flew back to Lagos, immediately called Nadaya and Bryce and Ian, and I said, look, guys, I know we have this thing, and we have some money to build it, but this guy is a billionaire. So let's just take a chance on it. Maybe we don't shut down Fora, but we try what he's talking about. So immediately, my guys were like, and to their credit, they were just like, you know what, let's try it. And so that was how I told him. He was like, okay, fine, I'm going to Toronto to meet with your team so we can plan how we're going to do it. So we then started doing these weekly calls, and that was how Andela. So Andela was born, like we launched our first class in May of 2014. So this was like March. So we launched in May, and then we just kept building and building and building.
Fora died.
Well, yes, Fora ultimately died because, I mean, at first, Andela actually, if you go to look at the earliest Andela callouts, they actually operated as Fora.
Oh.
Yeah, they actually operated as Fora.
And I'm sure the experience at Fora really helped, because I remember seeing the curriculum for Andela. It was quite a very robust curriculum.
Well, but the team was really good. So, I mean, my co-founder was a PhD from Harvard in education. Wow. And then my co-founders, Nadaya used to work for B Notions, which was like this really, really good technology consulting company in Canada. And he was actually supposed to go to Google. He just turned down their offer. So like I had a very good team. Like the guys knew what they were doing. And as the company evolved, we took learning science very seriously. So we spent a lot of money on like, how do you improve curriculum, which was why our training was kind of a bit more effective than others.
Indeed it was.
So yeah, so I mean, that was my breakthrough. Like just.
So how did you come to build that founding team? Like how did you get such amazing founders? Were they from Waterloo?
Yeah. So all of us except.
And how did you sell them that
vision?
That
Man,
vision,
I don't
that
even know
thought.
why they followed me. Because I know I would have followed myself. So, I mean, myself, Nadaya, and Bryce went to high school, that prep school that me and my brother went to.
That you finished in.
We went there together. But they were my brother's friends. They were not actually my friends, right? But we just stayed in a circle, right? So when I was starting Fora, right, I sort of talked them into I tried to pull people into the startup culture because when I was at Waterloo, it was only white people, then it was just me, right, this African guy, right? And I was trying to tell my fellow Africans in Waterloo that, guys, this is where the money is. Like, these guys are getting funded, like they're making pitches. Like, let's not go and be looking for a job at TD. So, I mean, Nadaya and Bryce were one of the few people that were like, let me see what you guys are doing, right? Because, I mean, naturally, like Africans, I mean, everybody was coming there using their, very, very resource constrained. So what was easier was to just focus on getting a job.
Survival.
You know what I mean? But they actually grabbed the gauntlet and followed. So that's how they joined the team. Ian was a competitor to us at Booknetter.
Oh, I see.
So we met up at a pitch competition and decided to build together. Then I met Jeremy. Jeremy then brought in Christina. Christina is like the Harvard PhD in education, that she was also coming on board to do like education technology. She had a lot of experience with like curriculum design and all that. So it was a very good team. So it was a stellar global team. I think that was one of the things I learned was like, and it was something, so when Pierre started taking me to Silicon Valley, I used to go see, there was a guy, the guy he worked for was like the scion of the PayPal mafia. His name is Joe Lonsdale.
Okay.
So he used to manage Peter Thiel's money.
Oh, I see.
So we used to go see him in New York. And one dinner, he said something. I just asked him at dinner, I was like, what is the one advice that, you would give us, right? Like you give anybody who's trying to build a company now. And he said something that I never forgot. He said, if you want to build $1 billion company, you got to find a bunch of people who could have built $10 million companies on their own. And then instead of all of you doing it separately, you come together, and that's $1 billion company.
Sounds very
So I
interesting.
never actually forgot that. So when the partnership arrangement with Jeremy came, I mean, I own 70% of Fora.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
And the other partners own 30%.
Yeah, because I mean, to be fair, I was the one on the ground.
Okay.
I was also the one financing, the most of the team. I was the one doing the sales. The rest of the team, some of them were part-time, right? So I owned a chunk, right?
So how did it spread?
So no, but post the thing,
The investments of Jeremy.
post the investment, we all went to the same 10%, right? So they kept their 10%, and then I gave up my
6%.
equity to them. But the funny thing, the value of that, I didn't even get because it's vested, so I didn't stay the whole 4 years. The value of I probably got maybe like 3-4% of the actual business. The value of that was far beyond the value of Fora, like many times over. Right? So for me, I've never been somebody who particularly gives a lot of, I don't obsess over ownership, because the biggest thing I've learned is like, with these businesses, the outcomes are so binary. Like it's either 0 or 100 million. There's no you can't manage your return. So I'm like, if it's 100 million and I get 4, Koburu. Right? I'm not that greedy. I don't need to stunt. Yeah, it's on my bag now.
It just has to work.
I just need to survive. There's no need. So I've never really been, even at Flutterwave, same thing. Like everybody was like, I want this share, I want that share. I was like, look, man, just give me whatever you have, man. I just want to do work. And even today, I mean, my current business is probably the first business that I'm like, okay, I have to, because it's not really like a venture backable business. So this is the business where I have full control, but I actually don't have investors in this business, like in the actual business. I have investors whose money I manage, but I don't have investors in my actual business. Okay. So this is the first time I'm really running a business that I fully own. But I've just learned never to obsess about it, because even with 1% of $1 billion company, which in jail, the rest of it is just headache. So, and at the end of the day, decision making never really goes by shareholding. It's all a function of who's competent at what.
Meritocracy.
It's not meritocracy, it's just practicality, right? It's like, you're bringing money, and you said this is how we should do it. Yeah, so no problem. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's always very... So I think that's one of the things that really helped me. It was like my obsession with, I have to work with the best people in this business. It doesn't matter what my ownership is, because I just need to cheat, quote unquote, right? Cheat in the team, in the sense that I want to get the best talent to work with me. So if they want 50%, like when I was doing Flutterwave, it was like, I'm not doing this if it's not. I'm like, you know what? Just like, can we do it now? Let's just do it now. Because it's like, it doesn't matter. And also, I think for me, as I've evolved, it's also become increasingly about how do you actually build the business that solves people's problem, and less about how much do you actually make, right? Because for me, I'm not really that guy. I don't really care. I genuinely don't care about money. It's just never. It's not something I think about a lot, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it takes care of itself.
Yeah,
by solving problems.
It's not even about that. It's just like, the thing about the money is like, it's there, but it's not. Thinking about the money can, one, be very distracting.
I agree.
And two, you never really, a lot of what you call money is like very phantom, right? It's like paper. Do you understand? So you're just sitting over something that isn't really real. And you have to be very, especially if it's a business, because again, the business's money is not your money.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what comes to you is like far less than what the business is. So a lot of people get caught up in the money, but really what matters is like, are you building a reputation for value? And I always tell my a few mentees I have, I always say, look, the current thing gives you the right to do the next thing. So the most important thing is to build a reputation for doing stuff very well. Then you would never have to worry about money. Because at the very least, your skills and your reputation will give you enough to live. Just make sure that you don't increase your burn unnecessarily.
Increase your what?
Your burn rates.
Okay, burn.
Yeah, that's one thing I've watched out for in my life. I don't do...
Okay, that's lifestyle.
Yeah, my lifestyle, to be honest, my lifestyle hasn't changed from like, if it changed, it's not like a stepwise. I still live in Yaba, right? I live in Yaba, I live in an apartment. I own the apartment, but that's probably the biggest change in the last 10 years I've been working, right? I still eat where I eat. I still drink where I drink. I don't have bodyguard. My car hasn't changed. You know what I mean? I don't. Yeah. I don't stunt. I don't do any of those things and it's not because I don't want to, but it's just because I am insane about making sure my cost of living is low, because that's your true freedom. Just knowing that no matter what, if I see $5,000 in a month, I can fulfill all my obligations, and heaven will not fall.
Everybody's okay.
I know. I even married for it, right? That was the number one thing I was looking for in a wife. I was like, this babe, does she have a high born? I had like 3 or 4 girlfriends that they didn't understand, but like the reason I didn't return their call was because when we went for one holiday and I looked at the born rates, I was like, this thing will not work.
I feel like I'm the mic. I think a lot of people from the audience will agree with you. I mean, that's very exciting. I mean, I think something that cuts across in all the ventures that you've built so far that we know about is that you've always worked in partnerships, collaborations with people. How have you managed the dynamics? Because, I mean, collaborations and partnerships are hard. I've always built everything with people. As a matter of fact, I told someone, if you hear that I built something and I'm alone, it's most likely a lie.
Yeah. I think you always do much better working with people because, so there's this concept, particularly here, where people expect you to be an all-rounder, to do everything well. And you're sort of coached into it from school. But one of the pieces of advice that somebody gave me when I was, growing in business was like, focus heavily on your strengths and know them very well. So for me, I'm a great storyteller. I know how to build relationships. I know how to analyze business models and create value for everybody, right? And build new business models, right? Like I have a strategy head, right? And I can execute, right? I can sort of, I'm not going to be the one who does the job, but I'll be the one who leads the execution, and I can bother people, I can disturb. You know those people, I can disturb. So I just know that's my role on any team. If the team doesn't need that, then I don't need to be there. And that's what gives me the greatest confidence is that in my own sphere, I'm good. I don't code. I don't code. I don't pretend like I can code. And there are other things I can't do. Like I'm not really an operations guy. You know what I mean? Yes, I can make sure that the execution gets done, but I'm not really the guy who's like I usually need to have somebody who's like Scrum Master, essentially, right? Every day they're like checking everything. Yeah. But my job is more like, there's a problem. Okay, let's think our way around this problem and continue. That's my job, right? Either by leveraging relationships or thinking innovatively about how to solve the problem. And then I still have a legal brain. So I can read contracts, I can get around laws, I can write laws, I can draft. So all those things help quite a bit when it comes to the job. And I'm just very good at what I do. And every day I try to be better at what I do. I don't worry about the stuff I'm not good at. I just partner for that. So I think when you have that, your life is a lot easier when it comes to partnerships. Because you know what you bring to the table.
Your experience at Andela and your experience at Flutterwave, how much did you have to reinvent yourself? Because pretty much what you did for Andela is not necessarily the same with what you did for...
No, it was very, very different.
Yeah.
I mean, to be very honest, the work I did at Andela helped me quite a bit with getting Flutterwave done. Because Flutterwave really required somebody that had high visibility. Okay. People looked at as credible. I mean, banks are not letting you into their DB, except they know that you're a credible person. So haven't done the stuff with Andela, Mark Zuckerberg coming, all that gave me quite a bit of credibility. So that I used that to do it. But I think the biggest thing is, the biggest switch for me, actually in the switch between Andela and Flutterwave, I actually went to Arkansas for like 4 months just to study payments.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. 4 months.
Arkansas, what happened
Arkansas? So Little Rock, Arkansas actually turns out to be like, in many ways, kind of the birthplace of payments, like modern payment systems, right? Because AT&T started to do their research work around kind of modern core banking systems and national payment rails in Arkansas. So a lot of the processing that happens in payments actually happened in Arkansas at one time. So I had to go there to like understand what was going on, how it worked, all the different things, all the different processors, at a very like deep level. So I understood the business very well after those 4 months in Arkansas. So that helped us quite a bit, because when we were talking to the technical people in the banks, they'd be like, okay, this guy really understands, has a deep understanding of what we're dealing with. and so we can trust him with our systems. But I mean, there is no substitute for deeply understanding what you're building and the industry and the context around it. So every time I've had to build a new business, I go to a level of depth that my team is often like, this guy, you're like a bit obsessive, you know? It's almost like preparing for a new movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like you have to be a different kind of actor. So that's what helps me quite a bit in my own work. Because to build trust with people, you kind of have to know how they're thinking, right?
Definitely.
And you have to put yourself in their shoes. So I always made sure that I knew enough that, you know, I put myself in the shoe of the other guy and try to understand what are his competitive pressures, what will make him move, what matters to him, and that way I'm able to craft a value proposition that makes sense for him.
So how does that process typically happen for you on every venture?
It's a lot of work. So, I mean, a lot of it is, we first of all start out with like the core texts. Like every discipline has like core texts, like the one book that you have to read to understand how the whole thing works, right? So I always start off with, I'll read that core text, then a lot of conversations. Like I'll go talk to people. Then sometimes, depending on the industry, I would intern, right? So I'll go sit down at a place. Sometimes I would practice, right? Like my own business, like for example, at venture capital. So actually the firm, I started like angel investing in 2017.
Okay.
Right? So like properly, right? So I did a few transactions. You know, I structured a deal that got us some money to invest in more companies. So by 2018, it had become sort of like a side hustle. So when I knew I was going to leave Flutterwave, you know, I started to, you know, I put like formal rails on what we're doing. By 2019, end of 2019, I did the Moove deal. That was my first time taking a deal end to end. By 2020, we raised the fund. I did it on Angel List. We raised $10 million. Then we're doing it again. And I'm learning, like you're always learning. You're always learning. So you really have to, I spend a lot of money on my education. I mean, just in keeping with my parents, it's like, there's no amount of money I cannot spend on learning. Yeah. But it's always, I think as you grow, it becomes harder to find like a course. Like these days, if I want to learn about something, it's a lot harder for me to learn by like taking a course. Like usually I'll have to read a book and then reach out to people in that industry or go to a conference where like people who are in the industry. Because I learn a lot faster by talking to experts. Because I've built like quite a number of mental models around how things generally work. So if I talk to an expert and I ask this question, that question, it's very easy for me to figure out the unit economics of a business and the context. It probably fits in some sort of model. So you just like, okay, this is how this one works. Okay, fine, then I can now work with this.
Can you share some of those models with us? I know Charlie Munger has mental models. I would like to.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of my models are self-made.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
They're not.
I mean, someone once asked Charlie Munger. Someone once asked Charlie Munger that how do you choose people to head a company? You know, and his answer was, I find someone that has done it before.
That's a great.
So it's as simple as that, right? And the person was like, why don't you raise people? He said, no, someone can do that, but I.
That's my own way. So I think the first model of doing business in Africa is if you build a business and no one's making money apart from you, it's a bad business. Like if your users are not making money, it's a bad business. Don't do it in Africa. Do it somewhere else. You know, like your business has to be somebody's business. Right? So that's like a core.
I think, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, your business has to be somebody's business. So, I mean, with Andela, right, like it's like our business was getting these young people to work with companies. So, and their business was putting out outputs. But even for the young person who we're working with, they wanted to get some income, right? So everybody was aligned. Flutterwave, very obvious, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's making money on the other side. So Moove, which is our other business, like the driver, right? The guy wants to buy an asset. He wants to pay off. Yeah. So your business is his business. People take their businesses seriously. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Because that's how they eat. So if you want to build a business, make it somebody's business.
Interestingly, I saw a statistic yesterday that in Nigeria, over 80% of the workforce is self-employed.
Yeah, I believe that. It's one of the things. Another thing I look at is like, if you want to get somebody to do something, you have to give them a reason to. Yeah. And that's something I've learned. So when I mean, like I said, why did Fora fail? It failed primarily because NUC had no incentive. And it's not corruption. I'm not saying that it's not corruption. It's just like, if I had gone to them and I said, look, if you do this, for every student who enrolls on this course, NUC gets $10. Like, I think it would have gone through. Yeah. But obviously, I didn't have the wisdom at that time to do that, right? But that's a mental model I have. So I always ask, like, what's in it for you is the first question to answer before you even get there. And you try and structure it in an institutional way.
So your rules kept evolving, right? From Andela, you were more like an entrepreneur, ground up, trying to sell to investor. From Flutterwave, you were more like an influencer, builder, because you had proven yourself. Your credibility had grown. Yeah. So obviously they wanted to work with you. Yeah. Then now
you still had to build trust with them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, banks are not easy to just get into like that. You had to. I remember then I was in Y Combinator. I mean, the most important thing with the banks was that they love status symbols. So, okay, that's the guy who brought Mark Zuckerberg to Nigeria. That's your calling card, right? Yeah. But then there are other things, like we're in Y Combinator, Visa, MasterCard are investors. My chairman was the former president of Visa. So I had all the calling cards. I'd fly them out to Silicon Valley. I came every weekend. I was in Nigeria. I was in San Francisco raising money, but I would go there Sunday to Tuesday nights, take a Tuesday night flight, get to Nigeria on Thursday, do team meeting on Friday, and hang out with bank CEOs and EDs and
over the weekend.
Wow, that was intense. Yeah, I did that for like 18 weeks. Wow. Right. A lot of work. In fact, I actually had a stroke.
How did that affect your health?
No, it was crazy. I actually had a stroke towards the end of 2017.
Wow.
All right. Yeah. So, it's a lot of work. It's not as simple as it looks. Yeah, but you see, what I've learned is that if you want to build a company that grows that fast, it's like launching a rocket, right? You have to gather a lot of trust. THRUST, right? So it's literally like energy active. I don't know that I can drive myself that hard, but it makes a lot of sense to me that you would have to work that hard to achieve the kind of results that we did within 3 years.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. So the question I was asking, but thanks for that.
Yeah.
But the question I was asking was, you now evolved to Moove.
Yes.
And Moove, you came in more like a VC.
Yeah, like a founding investor.
That's what
we.
And Moove, I think, if you don't look closely, you won't even know it's a Nigerian company.
Yeah, so that's my new thing, right? I tried my best to not build like Nigerian companies.
So tell us about that. Because I think Moove, you guys recently raised from the Mubadala Fund.
Yeah, we raised Mubadala and BlackRock.
Yeah. I think debt equity.
Yeah, so BlackRock manages our equity portfolios, $400 million. Mubadala is our equity partner.
And you are in how many countries?
We're now in 15 cities. We use cities instead of countries because in a place, for example, like Lagos, we're Lagos and Abuja, right? Although in Abuja we only do luxury cars. Mm-hmm. In India we're in 2 cities.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're in Delhi and another city.
I think you're in Dubai also?
Yeah, we're in Dubai as well, right? We're in Dubai.
London.
We're in London. I think we just opened Poland or something. Warsaw. Yeah, we're going to the US next year.
And 2 Nigerian founders.
Yeah, all Nigerian founders.
Wow.
So I mean, Move was an idea. Move was an idea, that I had because so Uber has been like a big part of my life, right? So when I was at Andela, I used to organize hackathons for Uber, right? As a way to just kind of, I was trying to get them as a client. They ultimately didn't come. They went to India instead. But then when I was at Flutterwave, Uber was my direct client. So they were one of my top 5 customers. So I paid a lot of attention to what they were doing and built a lot of relationships. I mean, one of the things that another mental model is like, only focus on your top 20 customers, ignore everybody else, right? Like, I call it the Pareto principle. I just focus on like the top guys, and like I don't do democracy. I'm very much partial, right? So we had 20 customers. I called them every week. I was their best friend. I used to be at their children's graduation. I used to mentor their kids. That was my model. So Uber was one of those guys. And Uber ran into some trouble. I don't know if you remember, there was a time they were banning them, getting harassed.
I remember, yeah.
So I was like, if these guys stop, I'm in trouble, right? Because like these guys were doing like 60 million naira a day at that time. So that was a big chunk. Yeah, that was a big chunk of my volumes. I was like, I can't let you guys stop. No matter what is going on, I can't let you stop. So actually, I was like, okay, how can I solve this problem for them? So we found some people. So the big idea was, by the time I spoke to the lower level people and the governors people and everything, I realized that, okay, the problem was that they don't make money from Uber. So that was when if you go to Lagos, every time you go on a trip, there's always like this Lagos road maintenance fee. It's actually written into the law. So, I mean, obviously, the first thing they will try and tell you is like, oh, pay bribe to somebody. And I was like, look, we can't do that. It's Uber. Like, it won't work. So let's do the one we can actually do as opposed to the one that will not work. And that was always my protection with dealing with public agencies. It was like, I'm an American company. If I pay bribe, I'll go to jail and you will go to jail. So let's just do the one that works, right? Let's do something else, right? So this one I said, okay, so why don't we write a ride-sharing law? And then, obviously, as part of the ride-sharing law, every ride pays like, I think, 50 naira or 100 naira to the government. And everybody was aligned, right? So, but when we now did that, I said, look, Uber, you're going to keep having a bad reputation because, again, back to my mental model, your business is nobody's business, right? It's not the government's business. The taxi drivers, you're removing food from their mouths. These drivers that you say you have, they are not really a stakeholder in any way. You know what I mean? They're not people that, you're not giving them anything really, and you're taking 25%. So why don't we work on a different kind of model, right? You're not allowed to provide the cars. The cars are getting rubbish every day. What if we figured out a way to partner, right? So that was when I was now looking for a partner for that. So that was when Ladi and Jide were good friends of mine. They're PE guys. They kind of understand how to raise debt, which is what you need.
Jide was at Grace Lake, right?
Yes. He owns Grace Lake. They both own Grace Lake. So they know how to raise debt. I didn't know how to raise debt, but I was going to learn from them. So I was like, okay, guys, come and run this thing, right? But this time, because of lessons I had learned, as much as I don't care about equity, right, I do care about value. So I knew I was transitioning from being entrepreneur to VC. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to invest cash. I didn't want anybody to give me equity, right? So I wanted to invest cash like I was on the other side of the table. So I told them that, look, I only have, they were very skittish, right? They were like, oh, well, when the money shows up, then we'll do it, right? But it's an interesting idea. I drove them, right? Eventually, when they saw the scope of the opportunity that Uber was going to give them, they were like, wow, this is incredible. However, we still can't put our money in until they give us. And there was a 150K gap where you just had to do one or two things, rent some cars, do a pilot. And they were like, we can't put our own money in that. So I was like, so this is how this deal is going to. So I just said, look, you know what? Take 150K for 10%. They're like, yeah, it's worth nothing, so no problem. For 15%, sorry. It's like, it's worth nothing, so feel free. So that was how I got 15%. So I became one of the founding investors of Moove. Wow. And then the business just, and then actually it looked as if I had made a foolish decision because the day we were supposed to launch, Naira plunges and COVID happens.
Hey.
So, so I was like, okay. I was like, God, okay, I get it. I should go back to, because at that time, what I had done before then, so when I left Flutterwave, I went to work for Madam Obi. I was her campaign manager, for her election. Yeah. So that was where I was. I wasn't impressed or anything, right? So, but I spent a lot of money on that election. And this was like sort of my last, my last card. So I was like, and my wife was very heavily pregnant, right? During the campaign, she did the campaign with me, but she was very pregnant, so she went back to the States. So I wasn't in the right financial state to make that investment. I don't know why I did it. I was just like, so are you trying to tell me that I should just go back to America, collect this woman's green card? I still don't have any passport or green card or anything because I just don't want to do it. Like, should I collect this woman's green card and just go and look for a job? So I was like, I was very confused that time. But at the end of the day, God just things just turned around. Like, yes, the cars were kind of stuck for a few months, but then as soon we were the first ones to do this barricade, because we're just thinking, how do we solve the problem? So we started doing the barricade. So if you remember, during Uber, we're the first guys to have like these barricades in the cars. So that became very popular. So actually, it turned out to be a beautiful launch strategy because it's like the safest thing you can take right now is an Uber. Right? Because you have this barricade strategy, you have this cloth on the things. Nobody wanted to take boats or anything because they didn't know who had been in the car, whether that person had COVID.
Wow.
So that ended up being a beautiful launch strategy, and then that blew us up. But by the time we got to like 3,000 cars in Lagos, it became obvious that, look, this business in Lagos is not going to make money.
Really? What's indices or what's
There's a bunch of things,
signal
right?
did you see?
You buy cars in dollars, and you earn in Naira. And every year you have to pay interest on the money because it's debt. Yeah. And the interest is in dollars. So your Lagos business would work, but only with a cheaper brand of cars, which is why we brought in the Suzukis. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? So you had to calibrate all these things. And then at the end of the day, people can't, despite how much noise we make, we can't afford Uber. So we weren't making that much money on it. Uber was very helpful. They gave us guarantees, they gave us money, they gave us freebies, discounts, but even with all of that, it still wasn't making sense. So I think at the time we decided, okay, you know what? Let's try something in London.
How far in were you in this particular time?
Maybe like 2 years in.
2 years in?
Yeah. So we're like, okay, let's try it in London with 10 cars. With 10 cars, we made as much as the whole month. Of all I think then we had about 300 cars in Lagos. So just with
10 cars?
Just with 10 cars. Because you pay so much more money. Yeah. One trip to the airport has eclipsed a day of income in Lagos.
True. £100. Yeah. One trip.
In FX.
So,
wow.
Just like, okay, you know what?
This makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically, building a global product and watching it scale.
Yes. So once we saw what happened in London, we're like, we need to. Well, first, so here's the dynamic I didn't realize, right? So when you go to the UK, right, 95% of people, the first thing you can do is drive a taxi, right? That's the only thing you can really do, right? And you typically don't have the money to buy your own car. So actually, the product worked even better in the UK, right? Because it was like fundamental to an immigrant survival strategy. Their only options were to lease a car, which was very expensive, or to get into this taxi system, which is also extremely disempowering, right? And also, they don't have financial services, like they don't have a credit rating, they don't have a bank account, they don't have, do you understand? So we ended up becoming like gold. Why do people in Nigeria, they always say, oh, you people are making money off us. You know how Nigerians can be, you know, a little bit ungrateful, just a little bit.
And entitled.
But in all these other countries where we are, like people love us. I mean, people love us in Nigeria, but you know, maybe 40% of the time you hear some complaints, or they are just squeezing us. But there, they're like, these guys are lifesavers. Because like, what would I do? You know, I drive this thing for 3 years, I make a good income, and I still have a car. So I can give that car to my son and go and do it again. Do you understand? So by the time I've done this for 6 years, 7 years while studying, because we have a hard cap on how much you can drive. You can only drive about 12 hours a day. So if you do 12 hours a day, you study 7 hours a day, or whatever. I mean, I imagine that you're working very, very hard, but at the same time, like, it just helps you to be able to create that balance. I mean, not just balance, it's like it really helps accelerate your experience as an immigrant, and you can build from scratch. So we have so many stories of immigrants who owe their, like, the only reason why they can stay in the UK is because they have this car, and they have this job, and they have the ability to like pay for their family and go to school.
So would you say the business model changed from what you ran in Nigeria to what you ran?
No, it's the same business model. It's just that the use case abroad was very different, but even more compelling for the people abroad, right? So we started to scale globally using that, and you know, I'm glad we did that very early. I mean, for me, one thing I'd learned from Andela and Flutterwave was the importance of global scale. So at Andela, you know, same thing. Like by the time I'd left, I watched Andela just sort of evolve from a African company to a global company. Seeing the same thing with Flutterwave. Flutterwave, I actually led that. I did the US expansion so that we could serve businesses in the US or African businesses in the US that wanted to accept payments from all over the world. So I know that global, like when I think about the kind of businesses I build and we always think about them as global first, right? So for example, like I'm building, I was saying about Safe Town, right?
Yeah.
Safe Town is not a Yoruba name, it's not a, you understand what I'm saying? It's an English name, it works anywhere in the world. So safetown.com, there's no .ng, there's no, like if you go on the website, you know, you just see two black people, they're trying, it's basically a home ownership, flexible payments for home ownership platform. So
more like safe to own.
Safe to own. That's actually what Safe Town means, safe to own. So there's no anything. Maybe the only exception is like Itana, which actually we started as Talent City because we also wanted to keep in that ethos. But because Itana is such a local product, I mean, it's a way to launch a global business from Nigeria.
Okay.
All right, like the legal apparatus and the banking and everything, we do it for you from Nigeria. So because of that, it's Itana.
Interesting.
Everybody calls it Itana.
That's what I do.
Us.
I was about to admit it. I never knew.
You never knew it was Itana, but that's about as local as we've gone. So I always believe in this concept of you're a global citizen. Like, don't limit yourself to Nigeria or any location, really. Don't limit yourself. Build your business as a global business. Incorporate in Delaware. Build like as if you're a global business from day one.
Yeah, I mean, coming to that, right? I remember we're talking earlier regarding the lemming effect and how the lemming effect speaks about the fact that people just do what they see has been done and without innovation. So looking at the tech scene right now in Nigeria, I mean, right now you're also wearing a VC hat.
Yes,
I think that's majorly what you do.
Yes.
You guys have about 100, almost 100.
Yeah, we're the largest seed stage investor by number of companies, which is actually kind of ridiculous.
How do you manage that?
We don't. so
What's the smallest ticket you see?
25.
25K.
Yeah. So let me tell you how we got there, to be very honest. So first fund, we didn't know what we're doing. We're just experimenting. So that was what it was. It was $1 million. We got very lucky on a few deals, and we made money. Okay, that was good. Fund 2, we were in the middle of COVID when we started the fund, right? Didn't think it was going to be successful, so we didn't build it as a big VC fund, even though it ended up being a $10 million fund, which is pretty considerable. And it was a rolling basis. We're raising it on a rolling basis. But the wisdom that we were trying to do at that time was like, okay, if somebody has a good idea, our name is more valuable than our cash, right? Oh, okay. So can we endorse them by putting in a small check? That way, all the other VCs would take a look because they will know that we did some work, right? So that was our thesis, and that worked out because in 2 ways, actually. One, we never invested more than apart from maybe 3 or 4 deals, we never invested more than 50K of our money in any business. We're doing a deal a week, right? So we just learn how to deploy rapidly. So that helps a lot because, if we lose money, it's not more than 50K, which kind of helps us with this current situation where almost everything is dying, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we're able to help quite a number of companies kind of get their footing, and then we're able to build this incredible community of angel investors who then picked and chose what businesses they would invest in. But most of them also didn't invest significant amounts of money. At least we used to consistently advise people that you could lose your money. And actually the data, I think the maximum someone would put in a deal, max was 50K. But most people would put in 10K, 5K. We even used to go down to 2.5, So that was mostly to just encourage people to not, put money they cannot lose, right? To be too exposed. So that really helped us. So when you say, so what I try to do is in my mental model of focus on your strength, not your weakness. If I see a startup is failing, right? If the founder comes for help, my job is look, I did it recently with the founder, right? The founder came to me, asked for advice. I said, look, my brother, there's no business here, right? How much do you have left in the bank? Give it back to your investors. And everybody was very, very grateful that the guy had that gesture, right? As opposed to just playing games with everybody or wasting your life.
What's your mental model on failure?
Oh, it's good. It's good. However, you have to fail with integrity.
Okay.
Right?
How do you mean?
Okay. So if you cheat on an exam, you failed, right? Even if you got the right score, you failed. Because you don't actually know the book. Right? So that's how to fail without integrity. And if they catch you, your failure will become apparent. Right? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how you fail without integrity. If you fail with integrity, you boldface, like we used to do, write nonsense, submit, and collect your dough properly.
They gave me F9.
The problem with a lot of founders is they don't fail with integrity. So, even a level higher than just writing rubbish is you actually prepared, and it happens, right? You prepared, you worked hard, but the questions, the lecturer was very wicked.
The ones you read did not come out.
The ones you read did not come out. You understand? So that's even failure with integrity, right? The problem I have with a lot of founders is a lot of founders don't fail with integrity, right? They either don't work on the business, or they focus on themselves, or they are not trying hard enough. You understand what I'm saying? So when they fail, it's very obvious to anybody who just takes a close look at the whole thing that no work was done. Those types of failures, I always remember. So when you come back and you say you want to do another business, I'm always like, Granny, good you understand what I'm saying? But if you failed with integrity, I would even be the one and I've done this before, that will call you, oh yeah, come. Is your head okay? Are you fine? Have you rested? You understand? Are you ready to try again? And then I'll carry you. I'll say, okay, what are we doing together? How are we doing it? What do we do? How do we do it? What do we need to? You understand? So that's the difference between the kind of failure that is good and the kind of failure that is bad. Unfortunately, a lot of the failures that we see, some of them at least, it doesn't look like the founders really tried, put in the work, right?
So, in your opinion, right, what do you think is, I was speaking earlier about the fact that everyone is trying to do a fintech product. Like, it's almost like if you just hit a stone on the ground, you're going to find a fintech product under, right? It's quite...
Everybody's banking your bank.
And the unbanked are not yet banked.
And your banks remain unbanked.
What's happening?
Your bank don't have money to bank.
And I think that's where you spoke about financial inclusion to economic inclusion.
Financial, yes. I mean, the first thing is that the general idea that somebody is financially included because they have a bank account is actually pretty ridiculous. But when you really think about it, it's like genius for the banks, right? It's like, okay, financially include this person, and then either they or your fintech pays for the account, pays for the fees. You understand what I'm saying? Meanwhile, the guy really doesn't have any money, right? And you haven't given him any money to put inside the account. So.
We're just doing data capture.
Data capture. I mean, I don't do much anymore in the transactional fintech space, right? For a lot of reasons. The first thing is that if you set up a payment company today, everybody forgets that you need like $5 million to provision for fraud, which would inevitably happen.
Yeah.
So people start payment companies with like 200,000, 500,000. I'm like, okay, have you paid school fees? Have you provisioned for the boys? It's coming. Nobody has ever managed to skip it. You must pay the boys.
School fees.
You have to pay your school fees. You have to pay your school fees. So everybody has had their own experience of that. So I don't do payments because I'm like, the risk is too much, right? Except you're doing B2B, in which case it's sort of less. But then B2B, you have to have the relationships. You have to be built. I mean, it's money. So there's a particular kind of person they give it to. It's not somebody that just graduated from OAU yesterday. You understand? It has to be somebody that actually has those relationships. So we've done a few B2B network payments businesses because the people had the relationships. Agency banking, I think the challenge with agency banking is that the rates are regulated. You understand what I'm saying? And then the upside is kind of capped. But I think the biggest thing is just a lot of people started fintechs because they saw Flutterwave, Paystack, and they were like, well, it's working. Let me join to the number. And by the time you poke and say, okay, what is it that you really, really, really want to do, they can't tell you anything that they want to do. Plus, they don't actually even have the experience. So if, for example, somebody left Flutterwave and said they are going to build a payment, I would look twice. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. I'll look at it like, okay, so what did you learn at Flutterwave that you want to now take to your own payments company, right? Maybe it's a different way of doing the transaction. Maybe it's fraud. But most of the people that fought at Flutterwave, fought fraud at Flutterwave will tell you that you cannot pay them $1 billion to start another payment company. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's just... The boys are just the boys. So if you have $5 million, why would you want to waste it? You might as well. So many of them, either they do government-to-government payments. Like government payments are easy because you have to use your identity. You understand? So it's very hard to defraud, right? Because you want to go and pay for somebody else's passport. Feel free. Feel free. Yeah. So they'll probably segment the market a bit, but as a big business, it doesn't really make sense anymore.
So in your opinion, I think more follow-up questions are there still opportunities that you see in the landscape, in the African landscape?
There are, but I think it's really about selling outcomes, financial outcomes, as opposed to financial access.
What do you mean?
Okay, so for example, I was talking to this guy, and he's like, you know, a lot of farming villages, right? The typical context to their fintech is that people just go there, set up an agent banking, but they don't have money. All they have are their products. And they need money to buy fertilizer, seeds, all this stuff. So imagine if you showed up to the place with the fertilizer, seeds, all that stuff, and you help them build the route to markets and pay them.
Like a commodity exchange kind of structure.
Like a commodity exchange structure, but just localized in one community. And you help them do a little bit of processing, all that kind of stuff, and sell into the market. Like, that's a great business. Do you get what I'm saying? Because you're actually putting money in their hands.
Without necessarily putting cash in
Without necessarily putting cash in their hands. Yeah. And you also put cash in your hands now because you pay them from the proceeds of what you sold.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're able to take care of their needs at a community level. You understand what I'm saying? And if you replicate the model or build software, technology platforms, like that's an impressive fintech. Like, I'm really proud of what the guys at Apex. Yeah, because I think they have sort of the innings of that kind of thing, right? Where they can take a farming community, process, support them, store, you know. So that's what I think.
So it's still fintech.
It's a lot of work.
It's still fintech.
The kind of fintech is not the one you sit down in Yaba and you be pressing computer. Those fintech, they have gone. So this one now, you go enter Igboro, you go and farm.
You go and farm.
You go and understand, okay, these guys are fishermen. Okay, who is buying their fish? Okay, how can I go and carry their fish to the people,
market,
to smoke it, sell it, then bring the money for them, then okay, what are they doing with the money? Okay, they want to send their children to school. Okay, how will I collect this money, set up school? You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of fintech that you can do now.
So basically you're saying like the opportunities that exist require more work than people are willing to put in.
Yes, way more work than most of these guys are willing to put in.
Or will you say people are not equipped to put in?
No, it's not. It's problem solving now. So it's not like as if there's anything mega in the whole thing. There are people doing it. It's just that you have to be somebody who is dogged and willing to do real work. It's not the kind that you jackpot and you start running the company from London.
Do we want to go into this?
It's not that kind of fintech that you can build now.
From London.
You can't build this all from London.
I mean, we've seen a lot of things happen in the tech scene recently. And I'm sure you expected me to speak about that.
Look, I don't know. What do you want to ask?
What do you think I'm asking?
I don't know.
Okay, I mean, let's start from the people that pay themselves $50,000 a month to the people that entrepreneurship as a service.
Look, I'll be honest with you. As it happens with any industry that manages to reach prominence, because humans are involved, you can lose your way. And I guess I'm probably one of the people that have become less popular over time in the tech community because I feel like a lot of people are living in la-la land. You understand what I'm saying? And you know, I think for me, the biggest challenge was just the brazenness with which people parrot things that don't work. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Like, it's like, we have seen this thing, we have tried it that way, it did not work. You know what I mean? And me, I know it doesn't work. You know it doesn't work. But you sort of like, on Twitter, make it seem like there's one special potion.
That if you add it.
That if you add it, it will work. But it doesn't work. You cannot build a company without hard work. There's nothing like soft life. If you wanted to do soft life, you should have gone to work. Yeah, you understand? So for you to be saying, oh, why are you working so hard? Balance your life. It doesn't work. You will work hard work if you want to do the work. And if you don't want to do the work, you go and look for employment. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes,
Nothing.
nothing.
But it's like, you just have to do the work. There's nobody that has done it the way you are saying. You understand what I'm saying? And then all these like overtly moralistic, not even moralistic, it's more like virtue signaling approaches to doing. I mean, people will be fired. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not civil service. Yeah. If people don't do their jobs, or if people are not a fit for the company, they will leave. They will be laid off. Yeah. It will happen because it's business we are doing here. We are not playing drama. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there are all these things that I see people kind of parrot, and it's sad, but I think a lot of lessons are being learned. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you understand. So I think my hope is that a lot of people have learned valuable lessons, right? My only plea is that I think, and it's so funny, I almost wrote an article. I try not to write except on Twitter, but maybe I will start doing that. But I wrote an article where I was like, last year, I wanted to write an article where I was like, founders need to have a come to Jesus moment. Like, I almost feel like we need to do one revival where everybody will come and you're like, if you know your company cannot survive, just come to the front. I receive Jesus.
One, run now.
Thank you, my brother.
Help them.
Help them. Like, I always feel like that's what we need to do. Like, sit down in a big room, like no press. If you know your company will not survive, just please come to the altar,
and receive
and surrender, like, so that we can just know what we are doing.
Maybe we'll consolidate.
Do you understand? So like, okay, let's help you. Three of you come together. We'll give you some fresh money so that you can fix it.
Go and make it work.
Your case is just return the money. If you have returned the money. If you don't have a kid, okay, let's shut it down. Let's not play founder anymore. Let's just shut it down. Because the amount of private calls I get after I tweet, right? I get calls from the same people who are on the TL posturing. As though all is well. Wow. Do you understand what I'm saying? I get calls from those same people. Wahala day, this one, that one. Can you help me? We are in debt. We touch customers' money. And I'm like, guys, there is no need to pretend. All this pretend that you are pretending.
It's not helping.
You need help. Just collect help. Receive help. Do you understand? You humble yourself and receive help. Because there's just a lot of posturing. Now, obviously now, some of the narratives are out of control because people that should have said something 8 months ago are talking now after the damage has been fully done. And that's why you're seeing the companies drop, like flies, because people are not being truthful about what they had. And that's why, one of my favorite Abuja startups is Strive Agric.
Yeah.
Because the moment they got into trouble, please, hands up, help me, and now,
see what they are doing.
It's an amazing business. So I just wish more people would do that, as opposed to believe that they can guy-man their way into building a business.
What would you say to someone who looks at you and tell you that the only problem they have is capital?
It's a lie. It's always a lie. It has never stopped being a lie. You know why? Because I always tell my friends, right? I say, look, when Solomon asked God, I never really understood that until one day, I was just reading, it's like, when God asked Solomon, what do you want, right? Some of us would have said money, right?
$1 billion.
$1 billion. The guy said wisdom. And he ended up being the richest man alive, right? You always just need wisdom more than you need capital. It's not something I'm just saying as an aspire to Maguire. I've seen it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, because capital without wisdom
you will waste it. You will waste it. I have a number of friends in Agric, and For a long time, they would talk to me, oh, please, I don't invest in farms. I don't invest in farms. So they would say, okay, but one day I had a conversation with one of those people, just, friendly conversation, older gentleman. And the guy said, you know what? After being in this business for 15 years, I finally realized that what I need is not money, it's knowledge.
Wow.
Because I'm seeing people with the same land that I have doing 5 times more yield without any new capital. How are they doing it? Right? My chickens would die. You hear what I'm saying? Of some random disease because of the water I'm feeding them is contaminated, and I don't know. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So there's so many businesses where knowledge is what they need. Flutterwave and Andela, neither of them started with capital. People don't believe it, but it's true. With Andela, we didn't start with capital. We put out free Twitter posts. We didn't do advertising, right? And said, if people want to come, they should come. The team was made up of people who know how to teach people software. So they taught, right? We looked for jobs on Odesk and Elance at the time. You understand what I'm saying? And we did the jobs and got paid. That's how we started. Flutterwave, we got clients first. Access Bank, Uber. First of all, we got them as clients. Started processing their payments. We got to $1 million in revenue before we got any money. We had our own friends and family raise a little bit. I put in a little bit of my money, but that was just literally like about $250 just to help us get our server set up. And at the end of the day, if you ask me, I wouldn't do it if I was doing it today that way.
Why?
No, because there was no need to spend that money on servers. Which I've just partnered with a bank, and which would have gotten all of that for free. But we had to have knowledge of how payment processing works. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I feel it's never a problem of capital. Because capital is, your business is supposed to get customers, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has all the elements of everything that you need. You understand? So what you just need to be able to do is orchestrate that value to be delivered to the customer, and you get paid. Once you look at it from that perspective,
Wow, that's profound.
That's really profound.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine, he was like, oh, I have a billboard business, this is, like, business is slow, I need capital. I said, is the capital going to bring the customer? But if I have sales team, I go hire. I said, no, if the guys don't have money, there's nothing you're going to do. Do you understand? That will get them something. Okay, what are people looking for? And we had a conversation, and it's funny, like we basically arrived at the idea that why can't he use the additional time that he has to launch a discount business? So go to businesses, tell them they don't have to pay anything. They should just give you a discount. You advertise their discount. You take half of the discount as commission. How much of that? Anybody can launch a business like that if you have some relationships. You don't need money.
Pretty much paying attention to value creation.
What are people looking for? How can you get it to them? Look at yourself as an errand boy. Once you do that, life is easy.
So you run a very, very, let me step it down a bit. You run a very, very busy schedule. You're a man of faith, you have a family. How do you balance all that?
I don't. And that's the honest truth. I'm looking for how to. But one thing that is helping me is that I look at the whole thing as my life, right? Like it's one life. I don't look at it as different things to balance. Like I look at it as I have one life to live for God, And so I'm doing whatever God needs me to do at a particular time. This year in particular I was busy because this is like, I had a lot of assignments, that I needed, I needed to be in certain rooms to make certain things happen. But again, like what I just try to do when I get to the end of the year, like I'm now, my year has already ended as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not like thinking, okay, next year I need to rebalance these skills. Okay, can I afford to spend a bit more time with my family? Can I afford to, you know what I mean? So then thinking about it. So I just think it's a matter of times and seasons. Now, is this advice I would encourage people to follow? Maybe not. In an ideal world, you should probably spend more time with your family, right? Because at the end of the day, those are the only people that love you in this world. Too. Everybody else, now just opportunity. So I mean, for me, that's where I want to get to, but I know that's not where I'm at right now.
Working towards it.
Yeah.
If you were to start all over again today, knowing what you know now, what would you be doing?
What would I be doing? It's funny. I think I ended where I wanted to start. You understand? And I don't know what the answer would be in 5-10 years, but where I'm at now, right? I think it's a accumulation of experiences that I had to have. You understand? So understanding how to be a founding team member at Andela allowed me to be a better CEO at Flutterwave. Understanding how to and how not to lead at Flutterwave allowed me to be a better investor. And now being a better investor is giving me a lot of context into how to support and build entire ecosystems for particular industries and bring people together. So, I mean, for me, the ultimate destination in my mind is like, I'm doing it, everything I do is public service in my mind. Yeah. But ultimately, I want to get to the point where I'm able to do it for free, which is why I won't do public service now because I still have a family to feed. No matter how low my burn is, I can't afford to do public service. But ultimately, I know that's where I'll end up. Public service, not politics, so.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, very clear. I'm not interested in politics, but public service. So I'm really just trying to build myself to the point where, I can afford to do it for free. And then that way, makes it a lot easier.
All right. I mean, you've spoken a lot about what you're building at Future Africa. Yeah. But what's something that's really exciting you at the moment?
So we're spending a lot of time thinking about AI and the future of work because we're the ones that it will impact the most. And at first I started off our research, because the way we invest actually is that we go deep, very similar to how we built our previous businesses. We as VCs go very deep into a space, try and understand the landscape, who's doing what are they doing, how are they doing it. And then we now find a few companies that we talk to, and then based on how the relationship evolves, we then invest. So we don't really listen to pitches. We don't really have that culture of like listening to pitches because we want to understand the business better than the founder, if not as well as the founder, right? So that allows us to understand who actually knows what they're talking about and who's just trying to bobo us. So because that's our model, I'm doing a lot of work on AI and the future of work, right? So trying to understand what parts of the future of work will AI disrupt, what parts of the future of work can AI not really disrupt, right? So it's work I'm excited about. There are a few models that we are experimenting with. One of the interesting revelations is that AI will first disrupt middle management before it disrupts like the mekunu, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Because the cost of getting AI to accurately do the work that a lower cost employee can do is like a bit insane. So like sort of getting the accuracy from like 75% to 99% makes no sense. You might as well just use human beings because they're cheaper. But like that means that 75%, that human in the loop, that's where most middle managers are, where they can kind of direct and tell you what to do and all that. So they are going to be disrupted. So my thought, now I'm thinking like, okay, well, and when I say disrupted, what it ultimately means is that you're going to need less of them to manage more people, right? So now trying to figure out, okay, what's the appropriate model for a world where that's happening? So I'm spending a lot of time thinking and talking about.
Let me ask you a question that someone in the audience might ask, and if they will flog me if I don't ask. Although we are going to go to the audience now and take questions, but are you currently funding?
We are. We're actually writing checks. We're very selective. I mean, we write maximum of 10 checks a year.
Wow,
Maximum. So really, like, yeah.
So what advice would you give a young founder? I mean, similar to the advice that I've forgotten his name, gave you at Silicon Valley.
So the advice that I give young founders here in Nigeria is don't stay stuck. It's a weird advice, like don't stay stuck in the future. So what do I mean by that? There are a lot of very interesting challenges in our country that have global potential if you can solve them well here. But if you try to solve those problems the way Silicon Valley solved them, you understand, you will fail. If you really just start from first principles and determine that, okay, this is a problem, I want to solve this problem, and you're willing to do the work to like study it, understand people's motivations, you may actually get to a solution that you can globalize, because there's so much opportunity in the challenges that we face here. So many other countries, if you travel, and I don't mean just going to the nice parts of America, if you travel, you find that our problems are not unique to us.
True. Yeah.
So if you actually take your time and deeply draw inspiration from your environment, you'll be able to build a global business from here.
Thank you very much, Iyin.